Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch is brought to you by Nedbank.
It's 2 p.m. Very good afternoon. This is Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Lunglele Makakula. Do watch us on our YouTube page. We are at Eswatini TV. We are on DSTV as well, channel 286. Welcome. As families navigate their back-to-school season, often one of the busiest and most financially demanding times of the year, access to flexible credit solutions becomes especially important. Among these solutions, overdrafts remain one of the most convenient and reliable short-term lending tools available when used responsibly. Mtabula Dlamini joins us in studio today to tell us more about Nedbank's smart financial tool. In our leading stories today, Eswatini is making strides in the aquaculture sector as it has already produced over 450,000 quality fingerlings. Let's get straight into our first story.
Digital helps you make cross-border payments. Human gives you global specialists. Digital allows you to apply for a loan anytime, anywhere. Human connects you to credit experts. Digital puts you in control of your money, while Human connects you to wealth advisors. Digital allows you to freeze, unfreeze, cancel, and reorder your card. Human gives you that personal touch. Digital when you want it. Human when you need it. Get the complete private banking experience with Nedbank Private Clients.
Eswatini is making strides to transform its aquaculture sector from small-scale subsistence activity to a commercial industry. The aquaculture program, implemented through a Taiwan-Eswatini collaboration, has already produced over 450,000 quality fingerlings and supported 125 farmers nationwide during the first phase, which is seen as a game-changer for job creation and economic diversification. Building on these foundations, Phase 2 from 2026 to 2029 is set to distribute more than 1 million fingerlings, promote large-scale commercial fish farming, and also expand reservoir cage culture. Senior Agricultural Officer in the Ministry of Agriculture, Boy Mavuso, expands on the progress of the aquaculture initiative, adding that currently 1.3 million malangeni is availed for Phase 2 of the initiative to help fish farmers scale.
Kunemandi lesingawasebenzisi silive nangemandi lasemadameni bomaguga bolusiphi maneni nje madamu lakakhiwe nguhulumende kude inhlanzi lebe ilinywa lapho kungileto tigaba ke sesibuka kusise sitawusuka ke la kwakheni lamadanyanyana labo 10 by 20 asale siya ku commercial scale la khona sitawu producer leti fishi kuma cages so sithi khwamanyana lesithathu faka lamantini lesikhwama ke nobuka sithatha umthamo lomningi ngoba per square meter khona nje uyamvuna 25 kg we fish enzawa nje lencane kulamalanga nje angapheli March sistabe sivuna kulamanye la senta khona ama trials lelibovane kalusipho sithi khona letivuthiwe lesitabe sitivuna kungasikuthi siyabuka ke simaguga kulo viki lelitako le sitabe sifaka lamanye ama cages la sewenda letikhwanyana lengikhuluma ngato la sewenda khona ama trials tonke leto ngileti indlela leti tawu leti tawuphakamisa live in terms of food security nejob namajob okuvula namathuba emisebenzi job security tonke leto tintfo leto tindlela leto le mali ke ya phase 2 in 1.3 million iqhamuka tihlobeni tethu tase-Taiwan ifaka ekhathi uhulumende weMaswati naye lofake ingcenye kepha nje ingcenye lenkulu iqhamuka kuleti hlobo tethu tahulumende wase-China lo sinangisani losisekele kakhulu kulo msebenzi. Imadlana lencane akusiyimali engako yokulekelela abalimi ukuthi bakhone kuthenga lenhlanyelo noma ke kube bengingasho ngithi nje bengingathi ngilamantshwele aleti fish ilekelela lapho iphindze ilekelele la kuthengeni kudla naletinye tintfo letitawudzingeka sisenda lokufuya kwaleti nhlanti sifuyela lokuthengisa. Silive senda liqwalingo nga-2003-2004 kune-report leyisho kude liswati lelivumeleke kudweba emfuleni edameni noma nganguphi ke noma umfula noma ke lokuphethe emanti lovumeleke nje kudweba athi udwebela kuyothengisa. Leti mfishi lesinato hayi atisilungele ukuthi singakhona ukuthi singadwebela kuyothengisa lokho kuliqala kukuganga. Bekunemthetho ke lebese usebenzisa lo sebenzisa umdzala kakhulu ungasisindi kumaguga sibe nawo ama cases lapho nabebiwa leti fish khona nakwengana ihlobo lesithi illegal and unregulated fishing akukho vele emthethweni ke lokho sibabambile ke bantfu bokhanza kuthi le fine vele ayikuvimbi naloko ukuthi labantu baganga beyincane kakhulu sabe sesiyawubuketa lo mthetho so ukhona ke lo mthetho sesitawuphuma nje silitiko sifundzise emphakathini etinkundleni sifunze namaphoyisa abe asibambisa lokuvumelekile kudweba ngelusinga nelihuka siyanika ke ma permits aloku yodweba akuto tonke nema RDAs la kakhona ngisho njalo noma ke kuto tonke tifundvo yayitfola le license nakhona uyodweba ngelihuka nelisinga. Lokunye uhlobo lokudweba likavumeleke manethi lokumakhenulu lokuhamba bese kuyasigedula lana sesigcina labanye sebashiya emhlabeni ngekuthi bekuyoganga ngoba futhi akusho ukuthi sive asati labanye bayati lokuthi bayaganga ngiko lokuganga lokhu nje ukhanza kutile kwenteke ebusuku sinetinkinga nje la kubomjoli sesivikile ukuthi bomjoli vele hawo sekwathela wayeka kucishe wonke nje lamadamu vele lokuganga kuseduze. Lamanye ama-license lesibanika wona kula sport fishing labo siyabanika vele ukhanze sibawenta lo mdlalo kulabachamuka lengaphandle ko-South Africa laba labanema-team nje labadweba banema-license bayasitakala.
The Eswatini Revenue Service has reported that revenue collections for the financial year 2024-2025 amounted to 14.612 billion amalangeni against a target of 14.54 billion. The service states that this was a 0.5% or 0.068 billion above target performance, which is a 12.2% increase. Compared to the last financial year, revenue collections increased by 1.588 billion Malangeni. Positive performances were recorded for value-added tax, company tax, other income tax, road toll, lotteries and gaming and motor vehicle levies against their respective targets for the period. On the other hand, other major tax types, including individual taxes, fuel tax and alcohol and tobacco levy, recorded below target performances during the period under review. Revenue collections from these tax types showed improvements of 8.8%, 22.5% and 26.7% respectively when compared to the previous year. Although being above target by 2.5%, road toll collections recorded by ERS were 15.4% lower compared to previous year due to administrative changes in the last 2 months of 2024-2025, where road toll is now collected on behalf of the road authority. In 2024-2025, tax revenue collections grew by 12.2%, a higher rate than the projected economic growth rate of 6.4%, mainly due to an improvement in administrative efficiencies. And that's it for our business news. It's 10 minutes after 2. We go for an ad break and resume shortly. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for staying with us. On to this now. As trade barriers continue to fall across the COMESA region, rules of origin have become one of the most powerful tools in regional commerce. The certificate of origin is a gateway to preferential market access and a test of industrial capacity. In our conversation with COMESA, we'll dig into how the system works, the challenges faced by traders, and what the future holds as COMESA moves towards a full digitalization. I'm joined by Barnes Sumani, who is COMESA's Senior Customs Officer. Sumani, thank you very much for your time. Let's get to it. What is the COMESA Certificate of Origin, and why is it rather important when you're looking at trade among COMESA countries?
Okay, the COMESA Certificate of Origin is a COMESA form identifying goods in which the designated issuing authority certifies that the goods to which the certificate relates to originate in a specific COMESA member state. So this certificate of origin is provided for in the protocol on the COMESA rules of origin. The protocol on the COMESA rules of origin is a legal instrument for COMESA. In terms of the importance of the COMESA certificate of origin, it serves as a proof that the goods meet the requirements of the COMESA rules of origin as are provided for in the COMESA protocol on the rules of origin. Hence, these goods will qualify to be cleared customs duty-free when they are cleared in another COMESA member state. But this will also depend on the level of the tariff reduction of the importing COMESA member state. Thank you.
And when you look at the certificate of origin, how widely used is it across the member states?
Well, the COMESA certificate of origin has been widely used by the various economic players in the COMESA member states. The usage started since the start of trading under the COMESA PTA, which was in 1984, then followed by the establishment of the COMESA Free Trade Area in 2000 up to date. So initially, COMESA certificates of origin were in paper version. But in November 2024, COMESA launched the pilot implementation of the COMESA electronic certificate of origin. So as of to date, which is February 2026, We have 5 COMESA member states who are participating in the pilot implementation of the COMESA Electronic Certificate of Origin. And these member states are Eswatini, Kenya, Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Currently, the COMESA Secretariat continues to work with the other member states in preparation for the full rollout of the implementation of the COMESA Electronic Certificate of Origin. So the introduction of the COMESA Electronic Certificate of Origin will lead to the reduction in the clearance of goods, because now the verification of the authenticity of the COMESA Certificate of Origin will now be done online using the Electronic Certificate of Origin system. And also the implementation of the Electronic Certificate of Origin is going to reduce fraud because the Certificate of Origin will no longer be in the paper version. Thank you.
And what's the impact that you would say the Certificate of Origin under COMESA has had on trade, specifically in the region?
So in terms of the impact of the COMESA Certificate of Origin, it's that it has led to the reduction of the cost of trading, considering that when the goods have been accompanied by a valid COMESA Certificate of Origin, they are not reliable to the payment of customs duty. So this is a benefit to the traders. Thank you.
All right, and just as we are about to conclude, how does one then get to obtain the COMESA Certificate of Origin?
So under COMESA, there are designated issuing authorities in the member states. So for one to get a certificate of origin, this person has to get in touch with the designated issuing authorities in that particular member state. The designated issuing authorities, we have the COMESA coordinating ministries, which mostly are the Ministry of Trade or Ministry of Commerce. In some member states, you have customs administrations, who are the designated issuing authorities of COMESA certificates of origin, while in other member states, you have the chambers of commerce as the designated issuing authority of COMESA certificates of origin. And also, before obtaining a COMESA certificate of origin, the economic operator will have to apply first to become a registered exporter to export goods under the COMESA trade agreements. So that application to become a registered exporter has to be submitted to the designated issuing authority. So in the case of Eswatini Revenue Authority, in particular the Customs Department, is the one that is the designated issuing authority of COMESA certificates of origin in Eswatini. And Eswatini is one of the countries that is piloting in the implementation of the COMESA electronic certificate of origin. So in that regard, applications will have to be made online.
Right, Ms. Barnes, thank you very much for your time. We'll leave you here. That was Barnes Sumani, Senior Customs Officer at COMESA, talking to us about the COMESA Certificate of Origin. Stay with us. The show continues after this.
right, welcome back. You're still tuned into Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you for choosing us this afternoon. Today, we're focusing on Nedbank's financial tool, the overdraft. And to tell us more about it, I'm joined by Mdabula Dlamini, who's the Manzini branch sales leader. Very good afternoon, Nkosi. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So we're talking about the most important, most interesting financial tool by Nedbank Eswatini, an overdraft. What is an overdraft, Nkosi?
And we would like to greet all viewers at home and to give a brief insight of an overdraft. An overdraft is a facility that is afforded to our client, which they can access. It's a short-term loan that is provided to the client.
Mm-hmm. So who is eligible to apply for an overdraft?
All clients who've got transactional account at Nedbank are eligible to qualify for an overdraft. To be specific, those that hold current account. However, even those who hold savings account, we encourage them to come through the bank. We can convert the savings accounts to a current account and they can have access to the overdraft immediately.
Okay, so I know anything that has to do with transactions, money, loans has a limit. If I apply and been granted, this overdraft, how much limit does a customer get?
Okay, the limits of the overdraft is underscored by the salary that the client get. So the affordability test is aligned to the funds of the money of your salary that is coming into your account. Remember, we've got an obligation to provide affordable overdrafts to our clients, not to borrow recklessly, and we need to borrow within the constraints, and so that the client can also survive post the overdraft that they have received.
Okay, so if I have loans with Nedbank and other debts, do I still qualify? Do you look at what I earn per month?
Yes, even if you have other facilities with Nedbank, you still do qualify for the overdraft. You are also subjected to affordability test, then that will suggest how much it can be afforded to you as a limit on your overdraft.
Okay, I want to understand, Nkosi, how it works clearly. Do I need to have a zero bank balance on my account in order to, use this facility, or it's okay even if I have funds on my account? How does it work?
Okay. In true essence, you don't need to have a zero balance. But most of the time you find that clients who come through to the bank to ask for the overdraft, they have run dry of the money. Hence, then you can literally say that those who've got needs of money can come through the bank. Ideally, an overdraft is a flexible facility that help our clients in the limitation of funds on their side. So it allows them to borrow more than what they have on the account. So then it's a flexible facility which is extended to our client on short-term basis, 12 months.
All right, so if I have 100 Malangeni, for instance, and I want to purchase an item worth 500 Malangeni, it's possible?
Yes, once the overdraft has been afforded to you, then you can withdraw more than the $100 that you have. If you swipe, you'll be able to buy that item of 500. However, take note that your balance will change to be negative 400 after the purchase.
Okay, so let's talk about repayment options. I have an overdraft of like 5,000 Malangeni. How do I repay back that money?
Thank you for the questions. An overdraft is a facility that is afforded to our client, which enables clients to manage it, and it's flexible. If the client has an intention to clear it, it can clear the overdraft over a period of 12 months. So we literally divided the 5,000 over 12 months. So each and every month your overdraft will drop with a certain fee, so that at the end of the 12 months you've got a zero balance on your account.
Okay, so it's only 12 months, not more than that.
We also take into our mind that it's a revolving credit. So it means that even after 12 months, probably if your overdraft has not been exhausted, you can still revolve the balance that you currently have on your overdraft and take it to the following month. It's a revolving credit. It keeps on going. As long as you need it, it keeps on to be in your account.
All right, just listening to you, Nkosi, I think this one needs a disciplined customer, certainly.
Yes, thank you very much to raise that, Mtombeni. It is indeed a facility that need us as clients to be more disciplined in terms of utilizing the funds on the overdraft. Mainly, it is sensible that you probably at some point in time you clear it.
Yeah, you know, some of us are quite reckless with money. What needs could this, you know, overdraft be for people? What can they use it for?
As part of our responsibility as a bank to provide solution to our clients, we also provide financial literacy to our clients to enable them to understand the position of the facility that we afford to them. We don't encourage reckless spending. We encourage clients to use this facility for immediate expenses that they need and in a form of an emergency, but not to be a facility that is afforded to someone who's going to use it recklessly.
Yeah. So Nedbank doesn't care if they can use it for entertainment purposes as long as you pay that amount that you've overdrafted.
Yes, logically we cannot get into details of how you spend your money, but one of our requirements when you inquire for an overdraft, we inquire what do you need for, and perhaps sometimes you'll say you need it for personal use, and Nedbank cannot get into details how you spend your money, so we then can get into that details of finding out where do you spend your money that you've achieved through the overdraft.
Okay. What are other advantages or benefits of having an overdraft?
Okay, the advantages of having an overdraft is that it releases an instant stress that you have as an individual of money, and instead of being frustrated or without being in a position to find a solution, as a bank, we say come to Nedbank so that we can provide a solution to you, because we've got various type of solution that we provide to our clients to relieve their stress of financial need. Hence, overdraft is also one of the solutions that we afford to our client. Maybe, for example, we're in a situation where now we've got school fees, and you find that the fees you can't absorb at that point in time. We are saying you can come to Nedbank and let's see what we can help you with over the facility of overdraft. Yeah,
so basically it's for emergency purposes.
Yes, we encourage emergency purposes and the immediate needs that you will need at that point in time, taking into consideration that it is aligned with your salary. So hence, when your salary comes in, and then it will settle the overdraft at some point in time. Okay,
as it is for emergency purposes, so can I use it when I'm outside the country, neighboring countries?
Yes, of course. It's a facility that is sitting within your account. So whether you are in South Africa, US, wherever, it's funds that belongs to you, you can utilize it anywhere in the world.
Okay, so if I have any issues with my account, am I able to reach out to any Nedbank officer instantly, immediately?
Yes, that's quite correct, Mtombeni. As a bank, wherever you see the name in the door, Nedbank, you can get in and you can be serviced accordingly when it comes to our overdraft facility.
Okay, so how do you apply for this overdraft, and how long does it take, being approved?
Overdraft, the client has to come through the bank, and we encourage the clients to bring their payslip and their ID so that he can do the overdraft. So we then access if the client has a current account or a savings account. If he has a current account, we then action the overdraft, and then within 24 hours you are expected to get your overdraft on your account. Okay. And we also have others overdrafts that we as a bank we do assessment for our client, and we advise them if they can be in a position to utilize such facility that is pre-approved for them.
Okay, so how long do I need to be with Nedbank for me to be eligible to apply?
And anyone who is waking up in the morning and going to work and getting a salary is eligible to come.
So it has to be the account that my salary gets.
Yes, it must be salaried at Nedbank.
Okay. All right, so lastly, before I let you go, Ngozi, contact details, for people that want more information on this.
Okay, thank you very much for that opportunity. My email address is ma.dlamini@nedbank.co.za, and my contact numbers are 7802-2819.
All right, thank you so much, Ngozi. Well, there you have it. If you want more information on an overdraft, please do contact Dabula Dlamini from Nedbank Eswatini. They're on Facebook as well. They are interactive. So any questions that you have, just post them through Facebook. Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome back, and now we'll speak to Cesar Calderon, lead economist in the Office of the Chief Economist for Africa at the World Bank, about the bank's latest global economic prospects for January of 2026, which assesses how the world economy is navigating trade tensions, debt pressures, and slowing global demand, and what this really means for Africa and countries such as Eswatini in the year ahead. Good afternoon, Calderon. Thank you very much for your time. So the World Bank's report does describe the global economy as showing resilience despite heightened trade tensions. How does the current global environment, in your assessment, shape growth prospects for developing economies in the year 2026?
Well, thank you for the invitation. To be honest with you, if you put yourself in April last year and you look at the performance of the world economy in 2025, economic activity has held up. All the announcements and the escalation of trade tensions back in April have resulted in lower tariff increases than expected, which has led to global trade not being affected as much. Now, there has been some adjustment from the exporters and producers, in the sense that if you think about the first half of 2025, there was a front loading of imports of producers that were trying to anticipate the announcement of tariffs that came in the second half. That on the one hand, that led to some sort of adjustment in global supply chains. And at the same time, that's from the trade side. From the financial side, you had an easing of global financial conditions as a result of declines in the rate of inflation worldwide. That led to lower interest rates and to some support for consumption and investment. No? And on the real sector side, most specifically in the US, economic activity has also held up because of a surging investment in artificial intelligence activities. No? Now, that global environment has supported growth in emerging markets, and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where there was a pickup in growth in 2025. Now, there are risks to that outlook. And the risks, again, come from the trade side, to the extent that there could be an escalation. There's a risk of an escalation of trade tensions because nations are increasingly using tariff and other policy tools for considerations of national security or geopolitics. And also the risk of tariffs being broadened to third-party countries, right? To the extent that, for instance, when you have a large economy that imposes tariffs, that lead to exporters relocating their products to other markets and putting some pressure on import competing industries in the country where they're redirecting their exports. That may lead to retaliatory measures in terms of safeguards and elevate trade tensions. We haven't seen that yet. Any retaliation to trade tensions has been limited, but there is always the risk. On the financial side, you would think that so far what we saw in 2025 was buoyant investors that led to some sort of like record equity valuations in the United States to levels that were slightly below, but levels compared to the dot-com bubble. No, the risk is what happens if this risk appetite declines, and the risk appetite can decline if, for instance, the companies that had these increases in valuations may produce earnings that are weaker than expected, or productivity gains from AI sectors are lower than expected, or, for instance, if there is a tighter than expected monetary policy stance because there's a resurgence in inflation, which could be attributed to several factors, including the pass-through of tariffs to consumer prices. Now, so far, that pass-through has been very limited, but there is always a risk. What would that imply? This a tightening of financial conditions for African economies. What would imply is that there will be an outflow of capital from Africa, with consequences on the exchange rates and on sovereign spreads, which would increase the external borrowing cost of Africa. And in the case of inflation, inflation could come up if there is a pass-through from weaker currencies to consumer prices.
If they're seeing as the report shows a modest improvement in economic growth in specifically sub-Saharan Africa of 4.3% in 2026, that's at least a projection. What do you think are the factors that are driving this recovery?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's some similarities to what's happening in the global economy and what's happening in Africa, in the sense that what we've seen in Africa is a moderation of inflation. Inflation has come up significantly and across the board in many countries. In some countries where inflation was still high in 2025, it is declining at a fast pace. And I can give you, for instance, the example of Ghana. And that reduction in inflation has led to an increase in the purchasing power of consumers. On the one hand, the hiking cycle of monetary policy has changed into an easing cycle. We have seen in 2025 many central banks that have been reducing policy rates. And that is to some extent supporting investment. In some cases, like in the case of Eswatini and other countries, that there has been an impact, an expansion in investment, in infrastructure projects, whether it's energy, water, roads, etc. So on the one hand, you have this support from consumption. On the other hand, you have this support on investment. On the government side, there's not going to be that much support because many countries in the region are still in the process of fiscal consolidation and trying to tackle their debt issues.
Despite stronger growth being reported here, expansion remains insufficient in the continent to create more jobs. What does this mean for the efforts in terms of poverty reduction in the region?
I mean, it's true that there has been a pickup in growth. I mean, growth is, as you mentioned, 4.3 in 2020. Expected in 2026, coming out from 4 in 2025, and it's going to be around 4.5 in 2027. But when you correct for the increase in population in Africa, we're talking about growth per capita rates that are 2% or smaller, which is a small increase in income per capita to have a dent on poverty. At the same time, you have problems with the growth model of African countries, which is growth that is not inclusive. Research at the bank has shown that, for instance, Africa will need to have a higher growth rate to have job creation numbers of other regions, or even poverty increases than other regions. So the growth effort has to be greater. Let me give you a couple of examples. For instance, in terms of growth and job creation, for 1 percentage point increase in growth, East Asia and the Pacific will create double the number of jobs than Africa. So that means that in order for African countries to create the same amount of jobs than East Asia, we need double the growth. And on the other hand, you have that the responsiveness of poverty to growth per capita is also very low in Africa with respect to other regions. Let me give you another example of a calculation that was made in recent research on inequality at the bank. For a 1 percentage increase in growth per capita in Africa, poverty will decline by 1%. In the rest of the world, on average, it declines by 2.5%. Which means in the end that that the nature of growth in the continent need to change. The growth model in the continent would need to change. Growth model in the continent should be more inclusive, should try to create more jobs. And that's the big challenge of Africa. Not only create a lot of jobs because of the big demographic increase, but also create quality jobs. Jobs that are stable, jobs that have a level of income that can lead to bigger aspirations for African people. No? Now, what does that mean? It means that what does this increase in growth means more specifically when it comes to poverty in Africa? Poverty is going to decline from the peak in 2024, but it's still going to be high. It's still going to be around 48% of people living below the international poverty line, which is still a level of poverty that is higher than the one in 2022. And because of the demographics, even though poverty rate is declining, the number of the poor in Africa is the number of the poorest population will increase approximately to 671 million by 2027.
Allow me to throw this one in, Cesar, while you speak on the need for inclusive growth. The report notes that global growth is forecast to at least 2.6% in 2026, which is down from 2.7% just in 2025. When you look at how things need to pan out, how do you think this lower pace then affect, let's say, demand, for example, for especially African exports?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the risks to the outlook, right? That for instance, trade restrictions and tighter financial conditions may affect global growth, right? Right now, in the outlook, I mean, there is a moderation in global growth, but I think the risk of a lower global growth will, of course, impact on the demand for energy and industrial commodities. No, oil would be one of them, right? Lower economic activity would lead to lower oil prices, and that you have to add to that the fact that OPEC and its alliance, which is the OPEC plus countries, may boost output. That would contribute to an even lower decline in oil prices. Of course, there's always the risk of conflict, and conflict especially in areas that are oil producer, like conflicts in the Middle East, that may also lead to offsetting forces to that declining oil prices. But the one thing for sure that we're going to observe is some maybe forecasts basically suggest that there's going to be some downward trend, but a lot of volatility in oil markets. In the case of metals and minerals, we have seen last year and in the beginning of this year an increase especially in copper and especially in gold and precious metals, particularly gold, silver, platinum, and platinum group metals, right? The risk of a lower global activity may lead to a decline in these prices. However, in the case of some minerals, especially critical minerals, that could be offset by a higher demand from green energy industries.
And turning to Eswatini, the report notes improved growth. What do you think are some of the drivers behind Eswatini's economic performance this year?
Well, in the case of Eswatini, I mean, you can think about factors that have supported economic activity from the demand side and factors that have supported Eswatini from the production side. From the demand side, you have higher consumption, private consumption, thanks to stable prices and interest rates. At the same time, you have a higher investment. And again, as I said before, I mean, part of this surging investment or this increasing investment in Eswatini is because it's associated to infrastructure projects, whether it's energy, whether it's roads, transportation in general, and water. That's from the demand side. From the supply side, part of it is explained by an expansion in services, no? Especially in finance, information and communication technologies, and domestic commerce. No? However, growth, according to the report, growth by 2026 or 27 is going to moderate to 3.8%, and and even though it's a moderation, there are also always risks to the outlook. I mean, there are going to be, as we all know, South Africa is one of the main trading partners of Eswatini. So consolidation of reforms and revival of growth in South Africa could be an upside factor for Eswatini. Other risks are timeliness in the implementation of infrastructure projects, for instance, and weather-related events. I mean, as we know, in Southern Africa has been decimated by floodings right at the beginning of this year.
Let's zone back in on the region, the sub-Saharan region. Known troubles, your debt vulnerabilities, and limited fiscal space. How do you think these affect growth-enhancing investment in the sub-Saharan region? I mean, investors want to come in, they want to spend more money on the region, but there are these fiscal issues, fiscal instabilities. How do you think those affect the investment that we need so bad?
I think the story is nuanced, and it's more interesting and not as straightforward as one may think, because you can look at two different things when it comes to the Africa region. You can look at the primary balance of the government. So this is the taxes minus expenditures, but excluding interest payments for the public debt. When you look at those numbers for the Africa region, there has been really an important effort to try to balance the budget. So primary balances are, on average, in the region are near zero or even inch into a surplus in the future. The big problem is that overall fiscal balances, which include interest payments, are still stubbornly high. We're talking about interest payments that on average for the region are around 3% of GDP. The problem is that these high interest payments, they're not a thing of today or just yesterday. This is something that has been happening. These are developments that have been happening in the region over the last 10, 15 years, which is this shift in the landscape of creditors away from non-concessional lending to more riskier financing, whether it's new creditor partners coming from bilateral governments outside the Paris Club, or market financing, the banks governments contracting loans or issuing sovereign bonds. So that riskier financing had led to a higher interest burden. In many countries in the region, interest payments end up being higher than spending in education and health, and there are reports that show that at the bank, and that leads to very painful trade-offs for governments, because they are debating how do they assign their spending within this limited amount of resources. One, on the agency of the country, try to increase domestic resource mobilization, In times when economic activity is fragile, you cannot come up with increases in taxes, but there could be actions that you can take in terms of, for instance, improving tax administration, to rationalizing your tax expenditures. That might lead to efficiency gains in taxation. And from the international community, the need for higher concessional lending. Now, when you look at the numbers post-COVID in terms of net financing into the region, you start seeing, especially for countries in Africa, a change in the sense that multilateral lending is increasing, which in this case comes at a lower interest rate, and the disbursements from riskier sources are declining from record highs. So hopefully that would lead to a financing mix that is not as expensive or onerous for African policymakers.
Cesar, we'll leave it here in the interest of time. Thank you very much for talking to us. That was Cesar Calderon, who is the lead economist of the Office of the Chief Economist for the Africa World Bank, talking to us about the World Bank's Economic Prospect Report for January for the year 2026. Nedbank Business Watch continues after this. Don't go anywhere.
Back. Thank you for staying with us. This is Nedbank Business Watch. This is the last segment of the program. We are now joined by Sifiso Nsibande, who is Treasury Sales Manager at Nedbank. Is going to give us an insights, break down today's market analysis. A very good afternoon, Sifiso. Thank you for coming through to Nedbank Business Watch. So let's start off with looking at the U.S. markets. What's happening in the U.S.? We saw President Donald Trump was threatening to go into war with Iran. What's happening there?
Yeah. Thanks, Lulu. Thanks for having me. Yes, so a lot of things actually happening in the U.S., causing volatility even in the markets. As you rightly said, there were some tensions that were brewing up in the U.S. when Trump was actually threatening to go into war with Iran because of issues around nuclear weapons that they are claiming that Iran currently possesses. But all of a sudden we saw a change, in the last few days when Trump then came back and said they are in serious talks with Iran. So the tensions then sort of eased because then people thought, okay, that means this thing is not going to precipitate into a war, but rather just a discussion because they are in talks, which means there might be some reaching of some agreements, we even saw the gold actually coming down because of that. The dollar was strengthening because of that. But guess what? Just yesterday, U.S. bombed an Iranian drone, which they are claiming that it was coming very close into their U.S. Aircraft carrier. In other words, they are saying it was in self-defense. The drone was not supposed to fly near the U.S. carrier. Okay. So that sort of returned the tensions once again. And we saw the dollar, starting again to actually come under pressure. So there's a lot of volatility in the markets because there's so many uncertainties. We are looking forward to a meeting on Friday, which it's going to be supposed to be the talks between Iran and the U.S. Now, we are not sure whether or not those meetings are going to happen, but it has been proposed for Friday, and it's supposed to take place in Turkey. But Iran is saying, no, they want it in Oman. So we don't know what eventually will be agreed and whether or not the meeting will be held. Otherwise, we are expecting the meeting to actually go on. I think it will sort of ease the tension that is currently being seen in the geopolitical arena.
Okay, just quickly coming back to Africa, neighboring country, South Africa, I understand, has put on hold interest rates. What's going on there?
Yes, so the South African Reserve Bank put interest rates on hold. And this was after they had seen the US also putting interest rates on hold. And I think the fundamentals sort of support that. It was largely expected that South Africa was going to put interest rates on hold. Because if you look at the rand, very strong. It's been very strong, for quite a while now. So it's moving in the right direction. Yes, there's fluctuation, but it's been hovering around the 15.9, 16.0205 area. So the fundamentals quite support. If you look at the inflation as well, the inflation has also been coming under checks, hovering around 3.3, 3.6%. So really, there isn't really any need, should I say, or incentive to be cutting interest at this point because everything is quite in check. But the reason why they were not even rushed in terms of effecting or cutting interest rates also is if you look at the electricity prices that are going to be coming into effect in April, that remains part of the risk that is still in South Africa, even though the energy availability factor has improved. If you remember, during the days of power cuts and load shedding in South Africa, that has sort of improved. So all the fundamentals are sort of encouraging the position that the South African Reserve Bank took to leave interest rates on hold.
All right, in the interest of time, Sifi, so let's just take a look at equities this afternoon and see what's happening there.
Yeah, so the equities, following the same volatility, you can see the S&P 500 in the US actually came down, 0.84%. You compare it to yesterday, simply because of what I've already highlighted, the uncertainty that's surrounding America. But I think we will see some improvement as we, move into the Friday meeting. And if it's held and if it's positive, there are sort of some agreements. We might see some improvements here. And also one of the things also that we actually saw, if you remember, the US was threatening 100% tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. But recently we saw also that that talk also has improved. India is saying they're striking a trade deal with the US. So that sort of, helps, in terms of bringing stability in the financial markets. The FTSE as well. The FTSE also coming under pressure, a little bit because of uncertainty, everything just moving around the tariffs here and there, and you never really know what's going to be actually agreed. And then coming home on the JSE, you can see an improvement there, mainly because about 20% of the JSE actually is influenced by the gold, should I say, resources. So once gold starts improving, you do start seeing the JSE actually going up in value. So that's the reason why the JSE is actually positive.
Okay, move on to gold and Brent crude oil.
Yeah, so if you look at gold was actually at record high just last week, 5,200. Came back down when the sentiments improved in the US. But now that the US has bombed the Iranian drone, we've seen gold go back up again because gold is considered a safe haven.
Yeah, as you said,
So if there's uncertainty, then people move into gold. That's the reason why it's at 5,000. And 5,000 is very high. I mean, this is something we haven't seen in a couple of years. Brent crude as well. Because of the what is actually happening in Venezuela, that the US is now tapping on the oil in Venezuela, we are actually seeing an improvement in the Brent crude price, and we're actually seeing this that is going to be consistent for the near future.
All right. Lastly, in currencies today, what's happening?
Yeah. So the dollar still coming under pressure. I mean, if you can see, 15.9 is something that you would not have even have thought about at the beginning of last year or even mid last year. You would not have thought that gold would be trading at 15.98. But that's because of all the uncertainties that are happening in the market. And right now, it has actually come down under pressure because of mainly of what I've already highlighted in terms of the uncertainty between Iran and the US. I think if we have positive meetings coming out of the Friday one, maybe next week we'll start seeing a dollar strength.
Okay.
But I think the fundamentals also that are actually coming out of South Africa are also helping the rand to strengthen. And then if you look at the GBP, SZL, you can see that this is as a result of a strong rand, more than just weakness in the other currencies. So the rand is relatively stronger, even when you look at it against all the three major currencies, because of the fundamentals that are actually supporting it. And we hope that this will be sustained into the near future.
All right, thank you so much, Sifiso, for that analysis. Well, there you have it. This was the last segment of Nedbank Business Watch. It's a minute before 3 p.m. Thank you for joining us. Worry not, if you've just tuned in, worry not, you can still watch this episode on our YouTube page. We'll see you next week at exactly 2 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch was brought to you by Nedbank.
Puffy. It's a squishy, squashy, cuddly, snuggly, bouncy place to stay. Where we run and jump, tumble and bump in a cushiony kind of way. Cushion Kids.
On the button. Grumpy's really excited today.